Are you hyped for today's episode of the Dance of Cinema podcast?
Man, I'm so upset about how this setup works today.
We're gonna thank today's sponsor, Artlist, for supporting this episode.
The Criterion Collection to sponsor us, but...
Yeah, okay, that would not have been that cool.
You don't think?
Right. I'm kidding.
Oh.
Bro.
Dude, your sarcasm is on another level. I can never
Yeah,
tell.
I know. Like, a lot of people tell me that, and I don't know if that's good or bad, because sometimes people, yeah.
Wow.
Okay, let's get this thing
All
rolling.
right, let's go. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 3 of the... Oh my gosh, dude, this angle.
The Dance of Cinema podcast.
My tripod's in my car, and so...
Professional.
I was too lazy to go get it, so I'm balancing everything on this box, and...
Very professional film.
Yeah. So, sorry, welcome to the 3rd episode of the Dance of Cinema podcast. I'm joined again by my wonderful co-host and friend and filmmaker buddy, Claudius Vick. Okay, so yeah, today's episode is a highly anticipated one, actually, because we're going to start by talking about a specific country. Today's episode, we're talking about contemporary Japanese cinema, and it's highly requested because on my Instagram story a couple weeks ago, I mentioned that I watched a film and it's my new favorite film, and I promised people that I would talk about it on this podcast. So,
and his community is going to smash him if he won't reveal that film.
Yeah. And I made Claudius watch it as well, so he can talk about it with me.
Yeah, luckily, because it's probably one of my new favorite films as well.
Oops. Okay, nice. So, so just hang on until the end of the episode, and we'll be talking about that film. Let's just quickly get into the sponsor, I suppose. The episode today is sponsored by Anchor, by Spotify. Anchor's the easiest way to make a podcast. I've been wanting to... Wait, I used that script last time.
I was just like, wait.
Anchor by Spotify is free to use, very user intuitive. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast. They'll match you with sponsors themselves, and there's no minimum listenership to do so. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Also, we want to try to get this episode between 20 and 30 minutes. First of all, because we have places to be, but also because last episode was like an hour and a half.
Yeah, and we wanted to do like 30 to 45 minutes, and it kind of got out of hand.
Yeah. But the reception on that episode was really good, actually. People listened to the whole thing, so...
Yeah, I know. I got a few messages as well.
Did you? Oh,
yeah,
nice.
Yeah. On Instagram.
Okay, so yeah, contemporary Japanese cinema. Obviously, if we were talking about Japanese cinema as a whole, we would have to do our own, or a separate episode about Akira Kurosawa and like Ozu and Mizoguchi and probably, like Hayao Miyazaki as well. But recently, and actually like independent of one another, I've gotten into contemporary Japanese cinema myself through Hirokazu Koreeda, and you through Kyoshi Kurosawa. And then it's been nice because the past month we've sort of like traded recommendations a little bit. So yeah, let's start with Kiyoshi Kurosawa because he's definitely the lesser known of the two, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
So how did you get into his work?
I think the first film that I wanted to watch of his was Pulse, but I didn't find it anywhere, and so I ended up not watching it, and it just stayed on my watch list for quite some time. But then somehow I found Cure, which I didn't know that it was the same director, I hadn't like heard of Kyoshi before that at all, basically. But I watched Cure, and it blew me away, because it was very much something like, in terms of the style and the directing and the way it's just um, constructed, kind of, it's very much something that I like. And then after watching Cure, I just binged his filmography, kind of. I haven't watched all of his films because he did make a lot. And yeah, for those who don't know, Kiyoshi Kurosawa is very much like a horror kind of director, but I'd never just categorize him as a genre director, because his films are very kind of, they play with the genre and they take the genre as a vehicle to tell something special. I think in one of his interviews, Kyoshi was asked about the genre, and what he said was along the lines of, horror always has to do with death, kind of, and he likes the idea of using death to explore life. There's a lot of films of his that do maybe repetitive, kind of, in terms of theme, and a detective having to find a murderer or whatever, and that kind of drifting into a more psychological horror thriller kind of direction. But when watching Cure, it was very much something I hadn't seen before, in terms of the plot as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I'll get quickly into how I sort of started with Kiyoshi's filmography. Japanese culture in general is, they have such a interesting and intimate relationship with death and the afterlife, I guess, the concept of that.
yeah,
And so that sort of ties their works together. It's very interesting how, yeah, contemporary Japanese
yeah,
cinema tends to just float around those ideas a lot.
yeah. And I think something they also have in common is exploring the daily, kind of, and
Mm-hmm.
daily life of people. Like Tokyo Sonata, for example, it's my second favorite Kyoshi. It's not anything to do with horror, but you can still feel Kyoshi's kind of origins of horror, and
Mm-hmm.
him using that knowledge on how to direct that film. But um, and this is something he mentioned in one of the interviews as well, that he likes not just going deep into the psyche of one person, or exploring the unknowable or whatever, something he does excessively in Cure, and I think it's brilliantly done. But he also just explores how people handle daily life and kind of finding a balance. Although I wouldn't say they ever get there, but it's just, yeah. But it's something that's similar to um, Koreeda, I think,
Mm-hmm.
because he explores the daily as well, a lot,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
almost all of his film. I mean, through a different lens, of course, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, yeah. So I got into Kiyoshi Kurosawa because I'd seen Pulse like many years ago. Initially, like there was only one scene from the film that I actually loved. Uh, and if you've seen the film, you probably know the one I'm talking about.
The
Well,
dance
yeah, yeah.
cinema.
Cure is hands down my favorite of his work as well. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely.
and actually, yeah, as soon as I watched it, that film also jumped straight into my top 100. So I had to do some rearranging of my list there.
Yeah, we'll talk more about Cure in a second. But Tokyo Sonata is just, the way Kyoshi directs is very. You might be able to compare it with someone like Haneke in some kind of way, because it. And those that know me know that I love Haneke's work. It's very. It can be very distanced. And what I love most about Kyoshi, both in Tokyo Sonata and in Cure, and I guess that's the segue to talking more about Cure as well, is that Kyoshi, like, he presents everything in the frame, like everything we have to know is there, but he presents it in such a way that there's not placed, like, there's no specific importance being placed on a certain part of the frame. So you might not notice it in the way you notice it in other films. What's important? It can be whatever. It can be a light, a glass of water, whatever. Like, it can, and you won't there's something kind of hidden and unknowable in the daily. The way he presents that is very, very intriguing to me because it like calls for the audience to pay a lot of attention.
Tokyo Sonata is also my second favorite of Kiyoshi's work. And I think I've seen 5 of his films. His filmography is like extensive though. Like he's made a lot of movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say Tokyo Sonata is my second favorite. Instead of Cure's level of like my love for it being like so high and like consistent, Tokyo Sonatas is sort of
Yeah.
more like an ebb and flow. Like I love certain parts of it, and then other parts of it I'm like less certain about. Mainly because I think the story sort of goes in a direction that, I mean, most directors wouldn't have taken it. Like, no spoilers, but as soon as Koji Yakusho's character pops up, I was like, wait, what the,
Yeah,
what's
yeah, yeah,
going
yeah.
on? And then, yeah, the film sort of takes a tangent from where I thought it was going. I'm like not against subversions at all, but it just felt almost like 2 different films got smushed together a little bit at that point. But then
Yeah,
it ends perfectly. So,
yeah,
yeah, I think the fact that you mentioned how both directors sort of focus on the everyday is, yeah, that's one of my favorite aspects about contemporary Japanese cinema,
yeah,
where the opening shot of Tokyo Sonata might even be my favorite part. And it's bookended beautifully as well with the ending. There's a
yeah.
couple of
For me, it's
parallels.
probably the
Yeah.
ending, the last shot, the
Yeah.
ending, and the last scene
Right.
is.
The beginning, though, it opens with just a single, I think it's a single take, might be 2, of like a newspaper being blown off of a table by an open window, the draft coming in through an open window. And then we see the main character, she goes over to close the door because rain is leaking in, but then decides to open the door again and just let the rain in, which, I mean, you can just think of it literally, or you can think of it in terms of like what it means for the beginning of the film. Last episode we talked about endings and how important they are, but it's openings like this that really make me wonder, yeah, maybe the opening is the most important, because the opening for Tokyo Sonata just speaks so much to like what that film as a whole is about, and so simply, like without a single word even spoken, like that, it takes a real genius, I almost want to say, to like orchestrate something like that and like draw so
Yeah,
little attention to things. But
yeah, and the fact that she looks out, but the camera's like she faces, like her back faces the camera.
yeah.
So even here, you don't see her face. You don't know what she's looking at. So again, there's always something within the frames of Kyoshi, like at least from what I've seen, that there seems to be something beyond the frame that you can't see, but that you can feel, but you don't know exactly what it is, and that's what makes it so intriguing, like to me, and because I love films that don't restrict themselves to the frame as such, but it's like when you say that characters have to feel like they live before the film and will continue living or existing afterwards, and that they don't just pop in there for the film. It's like this is more advanced than that, I think, even because within each scene there seems to be something more that you don't hear or see, and in Tokyo Sonata I think not hearing a certain thing, those that will watch it will know what it is, but then finally hearing it in the end, you'll definitely have to watch this to understand that kind of, but that made me tear up. Yeah, not hearing something and then hearing it in the end, like finally it's cathartic and sad and hopeful, and I don't know what it is, but it's
It's
like
life.
it's really, like really fucking powerful.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, Kyoshi hides certain things so cleverly, and then reveals them so rarely that when they are revealed, like they hit you like a train. It's incredible.
Yeah, I think it's such an astute observation that his directing style does focus a lot on like how the world continues outside of the frame, because almost more so than Hirokazu's work, Kiyoshi's work seems to be like very intentional. Not to say
Yeah.
Hirokazu's isn't, but his Koreeda's background does come from documentary, and so I feel like his films have a bit more like, I don't know, leniency in terms of coverage and
Mhm.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kiyoshi's work always feels very like premeditated. And Tokyo Sonata is a good example of that, where
Especially the good, like the really good ones.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's Kiyoshi's made films that are like genuine masterpieces, and then he's made other films I know that haven't been received as well. I saw his recent film from 2017 called Before We Vanish. It's like a sci-fi film, and yeah, I think maybe it was just playing with too big of a scale, or I don't know. It almost didn't even feel like the same guy behind it.
Same goes for Creepy,
Mm,
which the first half I loved, but then it drifts off, and it
mhm.
felt like the first half built up so much that it couldn't not necessarily just pay that off in the second part, because I don't think that films are about paying off and having a perfect conclusion or tying together each storyline, whatever. I don't think that's all that film is made for. And I think it's a very American way of viewing films. So, but the second half felt like a different film, kind of even,
Mm,
and
yeah.
it didn't. It just didn't feel right, and the tension, although there was more going on in the second half, was kind of gone for me, at least, in Creepy.
Hmm.
But then there's films like Cure that are like perfect, basically, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I actually like I was making the comparison between Cure and David Fincher's Seven when I first saw it.
Yeah.
And then I was
Same.
searching like after I saw Cure, like my entire internet history is just like searching about the film. Like I just wanted to
Yeah.
know more about it and like more about Kiyoshi as a director, as a person.
Yeah.
And I found this video essay about a comparison between Seven and Cure, which is like, I don't
Uh,
know. It felt like a video that I wanted to make, but somebody already did it.
uh,
But it just sort of talks about how David Fincher's style is very like directional, and of course he's like a very intentional director as well. But the way that he directs action, it sort of is meant to lead your eye to everything that's important,
yeah.
and use the edit to lead yourself to lead the audience to notice everything that's important, which leads to a very like engaging watch experience, but it also doesn't allow the viewer to like come to their own conclusions or
Yeah.
explore the world of the film as much so as in a Kiyoshi Kurosawa film,
Yeah.
where in Cure, he'll leave the camera stagnant for like minutes on end and just let you, well, maybe not
Or
minutes
not
on end, but
not just stagnant,
mhm.
or just wide
Yeah,
as fuck,
wide.
like far away from the action.
Hmm.
And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and like Kiyoshi will just let a scene sit, and it's up to the audience to, pay attention or not pay attention, or they're two different types of intentionality. And recently in my life, in my, I guess, journey as like a film watcher, it's been much more rewarding to see films like
Yeah.
Cure, where and yeah, things aren't just like fed to you on a platter. It's not just served to
Yeah.
you. The meaning, the literally like Seven is in my top 100 as well. But yeah, like yeah, the theme of the film is literally said to you at the last line of the film, and the theme of cure is so layered and ambiguous, and like it's just like
It's
still
way
I don't know
too
what to completely say.
it's way too complex to even summarize in one line. That wouldn't be possible with Cure.
Yeah.
Fincher is like very close to the action, always kind of leading your eye in a way that basically doesn't give you any freedom whatsoever, because it just, a character stands up and the camera does this, like basically, right? So
Right.
but that creates a kind of clinical distance as well, because the cameraman is kind of eliminated. It's like a robot following the action.
Yeah.
So it's like an ominous vibe the camera
Right,
has.
right.
And in Cure with Kyoshi, that like ominous feeling, that distance, kind of that makes you want to lean in, and comes from something completely different, kind of a different way of directing.
Yeah. Perfectly described. Yeah, that's I think that's one of the main things I love about, and we're not saying that like one is better than the other for sure. It's just
Yeah, definitely.
it's cool to see how the same sort of eeriness can come from two completely different styles of filmmaking.
Yeah.
I don't even know if we want to go into the themes of Cure. Maybe we should keep moving, because I wanted to talk about how.
I'll just say
okay,
that
okay.
it's, if you watch it with, like, if you pay attention, and it's hypnotic, like watching that film, not just
Yeah.
having to lean in and searching for what it means, and what the film may want to say, and what the characters are searching for, or what the film is searching for, is, I think, very, very hypnotic. And I've rewatched it recently, 1.5 weeks ago, and I liked it even more than the first time.
Yeah, I rewatched it myself. I was reading some theories online actually that the way that it's edited is meant to be like a form of hypnotism.
Yo.
Because I mean, this will all make much more sense if you've seen it or plan to watch it, but
Yeah, certain scenes I'm just sitting there and I'm like,
yeah, it's the way it's edited. Like, it's like I'm being
what?
brainwashed or something. It's
Yeah.
There's literally
Like
nothing like
pure,
it.
like actually, like from the first time I watched it to the second time I watched it, it was high, like as fuck on my list on the first time already, because it blew me away. But the second time, I was even, I wanted to pay attention to themes and kind of go at it more analytically, kind of, but I didn't, because it was so
Entrancing.
It's just such a special film.
Yeah, I wish we had seen it before we made our second episode, because I would absolutely include that in the conversation for best ending.
Yeah, and maybe you could have picked that, and I could have picked. Not that I like Tokyo Sonata's ending more, but I think that that last scene is really special in terms of ending as well. I think would that scene not have been that incredible, I wouldn't have loved the film as much, but that last scene makes everything like that happened before appear in a different light, kind of, and that's why I love that one.
Yeah, the more I actually had seen that scene, or I watched that scene before.
Oh yeah, you told
and
me.
When it started to play, I had this really weird like sense of nostalgia, because I mean, I must have caught the end of the film while watching on TV, like at my grandparents' house or something like that, because I like recognized the framing and I recognized the sounds, and it was a really weird experience, because I'd seen it before, but that was the only part of the movie I'd seen. So
it's kind of a nostalgic ending for me as well, because I played piano, and I mean the film's called Sonata, so I'm not going to spoil anything by saying there's going to be a piano somewhere in there, and I played that piece that maybe played at the end, I don't know, like several times before in my life, and just a great scene, great film, great director.
Great director, yeah. What a way to sum that up. All right, so let's get into my favorite working director, perhaps. Hirokazu
Yeah,
Koreeda.
whom I
And
discovered because of you. And
yeah, oh,
uh,
that makes me happy. Let's see. Yeah, I guess the most accessible film of his currently is Shoplifters.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah, also his most recent, I think. But I guess was that
Shoplifters,
I
is it?
yeah, I think it's his most
Okay,
recent.
yeah.
That's the one that I recommended to you first, right? Or
Yeah, but you told me to watch Like Father, Like Son first,
mhm,
and yeah, watch Shoplifters then.
mhm.
And then you told me to watch. I basically followed all of your instructions on how to go through his filmography.
Yeah.
So I watched Like Father, Like Son first,
Mhm.
then I watched Shoplifters and Still Walking on the same day, which was like
Wow.
incredible.
Yeah.
And then I went on to watch Our Little Sister.
Yeah.
And then I watched The
The
Secret
secret film.
Masterpiece.
Um dude, like
Yeah.
I didn't even know he'd made that cuz I'd heard of it before. We'll end on that in a quick second, but
Yeah.
the first film of his I saw was honestly, it might have been Shoplifters back in 2018.
Mm.
I might or yeah, I think it was. And I think that led me to watch Still Walking. I've seen every film he's directed except for The Third Murder or three. I don't remember what it's called, but I haven't seen that one yet. But yeah, I mean, the Koreeda just doesn't miss. Like literally every single film he's made has been like masterful in some regard or another. And even films that I don't love as much, like After the Storm or Nobody Knows, like they're still like phenomenal films. It's just I don't know, something about the story or something like that didn't hit as hard as others of his.
Yeah, but it's just because his other films
Yeah,
hit
it's
that hard
exactly
because they
exactly.
hit really hard. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It's I mean any other director would be lucky to even make something of lower tier Koreeda. It's yeah, his filmography is absolutely insane.
yeah,
And also when you consider like he hasn't been working that long, but he's made so many movies. Shoplifters was my favorite for the longest time because
of his, you
of
mean,
his,
not
yeah,
yeah.
of his. Thank you. I tried to get into it at the Telluride Film Festival. I lined up for it 6 times and I didn't get into a single screening.
Mm,
That was after
yeah,
it had won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, so everybody was like trying to get in to see this movie, so I couldn't see it. I ended up seeing it at a screening later on at a different event, and I was like, "Wow, that was a great film," but it didn't really like hit me how much I loved it until the second time I watched it. Going back to how Koreeda directs his actors and just makes everything seem so real. Like for one goes back to him having a background in documentary, but also I don't know, he knows what moments to include to make a film feel relatable, and it's not through grand gestures or anything. Like we're not relating to like necessarily traumas that the characters experience, but we're relating to the moments in between the big like chapter marks that normally would be like the focal points of like other like more conventional films. Like for example, we have the haircut scene in Shoplifters, which I remember you said like you loved, and then there's the marble from the Japanese soda bottle scene. Like there's just so many small
and
details that add
the
up.
the fish that form into one big one to eat the larger one. I mean, it's moments like these that are not just they don't just create some kind of intimacy with the characters, but they're kind of universal, in the way that everyone has feels or even has experienced one of those moments themselves, or knows that whatever it is in his films.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's why then they can be very personal very quickly. Yeah.
yeah. I had I had thought that Still Walking was his magnum opus, and in my Criterion Collection video, I talk about, oh, Still Walking is his magnum opus. Like, it's blah blah blah. Like, I was speaking as if I was some sort of expert on his filmography when I didn't even know he about his debut feature,
Yeah.
which I guess drum roll I'll add in post.
Yeah.
But his debut feature film, Maburoshi, is my new favorite movie. And like, I didn't even know that was part of his body of work. I'd not heard
I
of
don't
it.
even know. I don't even know how we're going to talk
I don't
about this
know
because
either.
it's such. It's so incredible. Like putting it into words is not going to do the film justice in any way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, of course, that's like same goes for every one of his films, but that film is just on another level. Like it's like yeah.
How do you like how do you make something like that as your debut feature? I know he'd made documentary films before that, but how? Like, so Maburoshi is a 1995 film, which just goes to show like how, in the scheme of things, recent his career has sort of taken up
And how many films that are so great
in
he's
such a short
made.
amount of
Like
time. Yeah,
yeah.
but and Maburoshi, it's interesting to see the inklings of his style sort of come about from that film. But I scoured the internet looking for interviews about it, like the night I watched it. I don't think I slept at all, just because it's been so long since a film affected me like that. Like, the last time that happened was when I saw The Tree of Life, and that was like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's why I was so excited when I saw this, because it literally, like, it changed my life a little bit. Like, hyperbole aside, it literally, like, man, it shook me so much. And his style has evolved
Yeah.
since making that film. And I know in a lot of interviews Koreeda said if he could change one thing, he was a little bit harsh on the way that they shot it, because in comparison to his recent works, it is much more like objectively framed and like cinematic, I guess you could say. And
Yeah.
he was of the belief that
Very, very,
framing,
very constructed, but it
yeah,
never. The thing is, wait, I'll have to say this real quick. The
go
thing
ahead.
is with Maburoshi, it feels, you feel that you know that it's constructed as hell, like it because every frame is perfect.
Yeah,
Every light and every element seems like it has meaning, and
yeah,
it does have meaning. You'll just
yeah,
have to
yeah.
get really deep into it, and then a world will open itself
Like,
to
tell me
you.
another film where the literal placement of a light source
Yeah.
speaks to the theme of the film.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
oh,
And the thing is, with light especially, it doesn't seem placed. When you look
yeah,
at Hollywood films or whatever, like even Fincher films, of course, which is Hollywood, but even Villeneuve, his other films, even like Deakin cinematography, which is very naturalistic kind of. But this cinematography is naturalistic but intentional, like on another level. It's
yeah, it's superior to everything. Like, I don't want to make any comparisons.
he goes to bed each day and then he says his prayers to
I
Koreeda
say my
and
prayers.
yeah.
Yeah. I think they he said, yeah, they didn't use any or any like light at all. I
And
think he said it
that's what
was
it seems
all
like. That's what it seems like.
natural light. Yeah.
But to induce meaning into that is just, bro,
Yeah, it's
what the fuck?
yeah, so he was saying that, yeah, it feels too constructed, I suppose. And he wanted to give more, I guess, life to the film by making things feel less planned. But I'm sorry, Koreeda, I have to disagree with you on your own film. Um, there's no other way to portray this film, I think. Like, through
Yeah,
its distance and through its objectivity, I think that's where that's where a lot of the emotion comes from. And like we've talked before a bit about how it's very intentional, like we never get physically too close to any of the characters. And this is a film of restraint. Like this is a film where you don't get any big breakdown like melodramatic crying scene. Like you see grief from afar, and that's like where the power of the film comes for me, at least. I mean, I don't even know how much more I want to go into it because so this is another reason, I guess, briefly why I felt the need to say that I had a new favorite film was that like The Tree of Life has been my favorite movie for almost a decade, and it's like changed back and forth between that and like Seven Samurai.
mm,
But recently, I've just seen so much of The Tree of Life. Like, I I almost feel it's being oversaturated to a point where, like, if something is so special and you just see it everywhere every single day, it starts to like lessen the impact of it. Like,
yeah. Because I think a lot of people don't, when we're talking about Instagram, for example, which is
mhm,
one place where it pops up a lot now.
yeah,
Some people might not, at least it feels that way because there's more, no extensive thought put into mm, not necessarily analyzing, but getting into the film and
yeah,
deciphering it, not necessarily like in a rational way, even if it's
mhm,
just emotionally, but so that it feels like a lot of people don't really seem to understand or have pulled their own feelings or
yeah, yeah,
opinion on the film from watching it, but just go for its visuals,
yeah.
which are amazing, of course.
Hmm.
But yeah,
I feel like people are just they're
sucking
and
its dick for its
yeah,
visuals,
and
as he said it.
like
Yeah.
I of course I'm happy that people love it because and I'm not trying to come from a standpoint of like, oh, I liked it before it was cool. Dude, it's so almost frustrating to see, but like everybody's just posting about like Tree of Life best shot film ever. And I'm like, but it's not just the visuals. Like the film is not good because of its visuals. It's good because of the
Yeah.
intention of the filmmaker, why he made it, and like how it speaks to contemporary cinema as a whole, and like it literally changed film as a medium. And then everybody's just posting about like, look at this shot, like this shot's amazing. And
Yeah.
like just because of that, I felt like, I mean, yeah, it's not, first of all, it's just not as fun to say like, oh, my favorite film is this, and then everybody's like, oh, that's my favorite film too. Like, I don't know, it's just changed recently where of course like I'll
Yeah.
always love that film, and it's still like, in my opinion, like one of the most powerful films ever made. But
I think what makes it so special is the way, and now we're talking about the Tree of
I know,
Life.
sorry,
What's
yeah.
no,
Everything always goes
no,
back
I'm
to it.
not. It's, I mean, this podcast is not going to be 30 minutes.
We'll wrap
But
it
the
up. We'll wrap it up.
thing with the Tree of Life is it's inherently special and not made for everyone.
Hmm.
Because I think, just to give one example, at least that's how I feel, showing a shot of a flower or a landscape or a sunflower, whatever, doesn't make it special yet. And but the Tree of Life doesn't necessarily always give you the segue into why it's special. So just it just gives you the shot, and you feel that it feels like there's some higher something to it, which I think kind of has if you want to really love the Tree of Life, there has to be some kind of belief for something. But I think that's something that a lot of Malick films kind of, it's a necessity for his films, like to really love his films, kind of, because they speak to a mentality that isn't like apparent in everyone, I think. So, and seeing everyone kind of,
I mean, I feel
loving it.
Yeah, I feel bad because part of me sounds like I'm gatekeeping. Like, you can't like this film unless you know everything about it. I don't want to be like that. It's just, it started to feel less special to me because it became so widespread and popular, especially on Instagram. But
I do agree that it feels less appreciated because more people post about it, because the appreciation doesn't feel like it goes deep.
It's not a genuine appreciation. Yeah, it's just like, give me likes because Emmanuel Lubezki killed this shot. But come on, like, it has to be more than that. Like, it's cheapening the film in a way to just post about it every day because, like, oh, it's like best cinematography. Like, of course, but like, do you get it? Yeah. Anyway, that's sort of why I was a bit relieved almost when I saw Maburoshi, because like the first 10 minutes I watched it, I was like, holy shit, like this could potentially be a new number one. And I always am scared to like think of a film like that as I'm experiencing it for the first time, but as literally like as every single second ticked by,
it was even scarier for me because I knew it was your number one. You recommended it to me, but then so I went in with like really high expectations.
Sure, yeah.
But it surpassed them. So it's like, why is it that good?
Yeah.
Like,
and I mean, yeah. So obviously, like, I hope you guys will check it out after this episode, but don't start posting about it every day. Also, I swear to God. Like,
but I don't think that's going to happen because Maburoshi's cinematography is
it's true.
Sophisticated, not in a way that it's not easy to understand, or of course same goes for something like the Tree of Life. But I think with Maburoshi it's more apparent, so that you'll have to dig deep to get into it.
Absolutely.
and to understand it, and they're so strong in context of the film. Of course they're strong as images, like just standing alone, but they're so effective because it's not just aesthetic, but because it's so perfect in context of the story, and it's an aesthetic that's necessary for the story, and it is the story as well. So
yeah, really quick before we conclude, I didn't just pick this random new favorite out of nowhere. There's actually like a lot of parallels between Maburoshi and the Tree of Life, in terms of like the thematics, how it deals with grief, the portrayal of childhood, obviously both through completely different lenses. The search for light, like literally everything. Like there are parallels.
Ebb and flow kind of emotion.
Absolutely. And so like this new favorite didn't just come out of nowhere. They're like, and my favorites always have some sort of thread that goes through them. It just it just happened that Maburoshi spoke to me on a level that other films don't, and I don't know. I'm gonna love this film till the day I die, but I have to like still collect my thoughts on it a little bit because I've only seen it twice and I've not even known it for a month. So I need to collect my thoughts on it a little bit more before I can like fully speak about it. But that's
same. I'll have to rewatch it. I didn't want to rewatch it right away because I wanted to leave some space between my first and my second one, because I wanted to think about it, because there's so much to think about.
Yeah.
And also a parallel that between the Tree of Life and Maburoshi is searching for an answer.
Yeah.
But not in a way that I mean every film. Way. I mean every film does that. But there's films that do it in a special way,
Yeah.
and Maburoshi is one
Yeah.
of them. So, and Cure is one of them as well. And
There's so many
Tokyo
parallels between the
Tokyo
films we've
Sonata as
talked
well.
about. Yeah.
I know, yeah.
Yeah.
Also in the way it's made, Maburoshi and Cure have a way of restraint,
Yes.
kind of in the directing and cinematography, but they don't have the same effect, like not even remotely.
Right.
It's a different kind of searching in Maburoshi than it is in Cure, for
Absolutely.
example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, as maybe I become like a contemporary Japanese director, I'll have to adopt some of these themes and tactics, because
Yeah.
Cure
I mean,
and Maburoshi have been two of the most life-changing films I've seen this year and ever, obviously. But
yeah, same. And ever.
yeah.
I mean, getting into Japanese cinema more and more in general these last weeks and months, 2 months,
It's been about
especially.
that
Yeah.
long, yeah.
Yeah, that's been incredible because now I'm like, okay, wait, should I watch this American or this French film, or should I watch another Japanese film? So now I'm kind of addicted. It's always the same when you watch films from a different country and you watch more and more from that country, you begin to experience a way of thinking that you simply don't have in local films or US films.
Because
So,
it's like the way that you've been conditioned to experience cinema of your country, yeah, I think.
yeah, and it's a different culture and a different way of understanding life and thinking about life. So that was incredible and still is, because I've still got a lot to watch. I mean, I have to get into Ozu, so that'll maybe be the next episode or
the golden age
soon,
of Japanese cinema. Yeah, I feel bad that we didn't even talk about any Kurosawa, but that'll be in another time. And for sure, like, I'll have to watch more German films as well so that we can have a bit of a trade there. Do a German episode.
Everybody watch Michael Haneke's film.
Yeah.
He is a genius.
I feel like he and Kyoshi Kurosawa would be friends.
They would be good friends, yeah. Yeah, making them, and then Andrei Zvegintsev, having those three collaborate on a film. It's going to be the most depressing shit you've ever seen in your life.
So objectively framed, so sad. Yeah.
It'll just be one shot.
Yeah, it'll be one shot.
But one stagnant shot.
Of course. And then at the very end, it dollies to the side to reveal something. I don't know. Yeah, man, that felt like a shorter episode, but definitely, we've been recording for an hour, so I'll try to cut it down. Yeah. But yeah, a lot of...
To 45.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, closing thoughts, though, I guess Maburoshi is my new favorite film. Don't go and post about it too much. But...
It perfectly fits into the canon of films that I consider favorites and that I love.
That's awesome.
Just the way it's shot and...
I thought you would like it as much.
One of the most incredible films that I've seen this year and the last, ever.
Let's stop hyping it up. It's not that good. Don't bother.
Yeah,
don't bother.
It's okay.
I just want it to be special, So.
Yeah, it's just Bruce being pretentious and me hopping on the train.
So yeah, thank you guys for tuning in to this third episode. We're going to try to improve the format and improve the visuals, at least on my end, as we go through each episode. I promise I'll have a tripod next time, because you're on my aperture box right now. All right. And yeah, tune in to the next episode whenever that comes out, probably in another month. But yeah, thanks everybody. Have a nice day, and go watch some contemporary Japanese films.
Peace out. Wait, why did it not record my audio?